Good morning. I wanted to record a video today talking a little bit about egg donation and about known egg donation in particular to explain why this is a path that I personally decided to go down with Compass and explain the benefits of it, how it might look a little bit different, and what the reasoning was behind me creating this program. So, first, I'll give a little bit of a background on Compass so you can understand a little bit more about me and what our value is, what our mission is. So, first, our mission is to basically, and I'm going to move my camera a little bit here because I can't read my slide when it's right there. But essentially, it is to navigate, coordinate, and assist paths to parenthood through gestational surrogacy and known egg donation with honesty, ethical actions, transparency, and strong communication as top priorities in each individualized journey. So essentially we specialize, I guess you would say, in gestational surrogacy journeys as well as known egg donation journeys. And then I myself, just to give you some information about me, I'm a mom through IVF. So my husband and we went through that process. We have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old now, and I from there I then went on to be an egg egg donor first. I did that 5 times, and then also was a gestational surrogate 3 times for 3 different families, and then we had also donated our remaining 2 embryos that we had from our own cycle. So I've seen little bits and pieces personally on different sides of the fertility world. So why are we different especially in this regard? So there are many agencies that are out there for egg donation, many that do an amazing job at it. One of the things, though, that I noticed when I was starting to look into the option of doing donation or egg donation instead of just surrogate journeys was there wasn't an agency that focused especially on known egg donation. So there are agencies that have that within their programs, and it seems to be more and more common within those programs to offer known egg donation, but there weren't any that had that as a specific goal or a specific requirement within the agency. So I made this decision based on a few different reasons, but I listed out the top 3 here so that you can kind of visually see that. The first was the voices of donor-conceived people is basically how we encompass persons who were conceived through the help of either egg or sperm donation or both. So if you think about this, it's still relatively new on the egg donation side. It's still a new science. So there are quite a few people that are just now maybe finding out about their roots of conception and what that genetic history in that background is. And so many of those people are now into adulthood from some of those earlier donation cycles. And so there has been a lot of debate, discussion, a lot of feelings involved around this whole idea of donor conception, and I believe that we need to value everyone's opinion within that and truly not just be like, okay, well, that's just a one-off or that's just their experience, but truly take it to heart and figure out what is it that we have been doing, where have we maybe taken some missteps, and where can we do better. So one of the things when I was researching this and I was looking into it that I kept coming across was the concept really that whether they think that this should exist or not, they want transparency, they want honesty. So with known egg donation, my number one goal is to keep that transparent aspect of it, not just in the here and now during the donation, but also make sure that I have donors and intended parents that are like-minded, that plan to remain open and transparent with the offspring. They aren't always going to be babies, and I say that all the time. We are creating human beings. We are creating people that, it's I can't believe at times that my children are already 7 and 10 years old, and it's like, wow, in that moment when you're thinking about starting your family, you picture a child, a baby. It's like, even thinking of them at 5, you're like, how are they going to be 5? And then in a blink of an eye it happens. And so we need to keep in mind that we're not just creating babies. We're not creating something that will live with parents forever, even though sometimes I want that. But we're creating human beings that will, in a very short amount of time, be adults, and we need to consider those thoughts and those feelings of these people. And then, of course, the changes in science. Genetic testing, as basically on a commercial basis, it's also new. It's not something that I think people even maybe, well, I'd have to see when exactly it started becoming popular, but 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't something that we thought would be feasible, would be an option. And now I'm personally on, the different genetic testing platforms that are out there, just because it's something that intrigues me to see that genetic makeup and the backgrounds and family genetics and lineage and everything. And so that's become a lot more popular. And what we're seeing is that has really what's created this rise in voices of donor conceived people, because they're finding out about these roots that maybe was kept from them for many years. Many parents didn't think that it needed to be brought up because it would always remain a non-issue, and that's just not the reality of it. We do know these things now, and I still tend to get some pushback from certain people that think, no, these are my children. I feel like I don't want to share this with them. Yes, people use it, but I'll just, make sure that I don't use it. And the problem is that, like I mentioned, we're not just talking about babies. We're not just talking about children. These are adults that will have many years into adulthood to be making their own decisions. I think that the more, the further we get into the world of science, the more commonplace this genetic testing is going to be. And we need to keep that in mind, that we just can't keep these things quiet, because one way or another it will come about, and the truth will be known to these future offspring. And then the last reason, or behind it, and I'll go a little bit more into the story a little bit further into the slides, but it's my own children. I made the decision to donate at that time. It was really only anonymous donation that was offered. So this was, this was in between my 2 children. So about 8, 9 years ago is when I was donating. But it wasn't something, known donation wasn't even a thought process. It was more like, you're lucky if someone sees value in you a little bit. It can be a little weird, and chooses you to be their donor, and that you roll with it, and it's very one-sided as far as that matching process happens. And I started talking to my son. I've been very open and honest with them. Of course, being in this industry, how can you not? They hear things all the time. But I started being a lot more honest and open with both of my children. But now that my son he's 10, he asks a lot more questions. He's got a brain very similar to mine, to where he's very analytical, and he wants to understand and know and see the whys behind things. And so it's a joy to see that, but it also has brought up some hard conversations, especially when it comes to my past donation cycles. So I did want to talk a little bit about how this process looks different than maybe other agencies or even in-house programs. So the first point, and I mentioned this with my own, it's a mutual matching. So there are a lot of times with maybe more traditional agencies or in-house programs, the donor has a very thorough profile, and it's something that intended parents are looking through these profiles and choosing based on their wants and their needs. And then the donor is just told, okay, we've got someone for you, let's roll forward. And in my method, or the way that I've done this, is that we create profiles for the intended parents too, because we want that transparency and that openness and that communication to continue, not just during the journey but afterward too. The idea of this is to make sure that those lines of communications stay open with the future donor offspring. And the best way to do that is to set up good lines of communication and expectations right now. So we want to make sure that these matches, it's not like the donor's just ticking off boxes of what the intended parents' wants and needs are, but it's also something that they feel, a relationship can be built on. And I tell people all the time, I'm one of those, I've got a very small friend base. I'm not someone that's, out there making friends with everyone. And so I understand that could be a little bit awkward. And so you don't need to, it's not this idea of, I'm going to find my new bestie, or I'm going to be, good friends with them forever. But we want to make sure that, if the donor is like, I really want you to be honest with children that are conceived through my genetics, and let them know who I am and why I did this. And, send me a Christmas card, or a, holiday card, or a birthday card, or it just updates, like maybe on the child's birthday, just send me something that says, hey, this is, what we're up to. This is what we're doing. So it doesn't have to be anything real dramatic or over the top, but it's just keeping those lines of communication open and allowing the child to know its genetic background, and how he or she came into this world from the very beginning, so that you never get to that like awkward stage of, oh, by the way, this is how it came about. It's just, it just being part of their story from the very beginning. And the same thing, it's like I'll have intended parents that are like, well, am I expected to maintain a relationship for years and years to come? And I want to see these relationships, whether it's something that's, more casual, or something that's very close. Either way, I want it to be organic. And so the best way to figure that out is, how are you meshing in the first place? How do you feel? Are you kind of getting like this gut feel that it's the right choice? Or are you feeling like maybe it's not for me? But regardless, I want to make sure that both parties are coming to an agreement on this match. We're doing, as part of that, we're doing match calls. So we're doing a call, via video conference, to where they can ask questions, they can actually see each other, they can see if it feels normal. I guess match calls never really feel natural and normal. They're, kind of like awkward blind dates, but you want to see if it's something that you feel like you can build upon, and if it feels like this is the right direction to go in. So a lot of times with, more traditional agency programs, since the matching is more one-sided, or you will, the plan is to never get to know that the other person or the other party on anything but maybe, paper on the donor side. That the match call is a pertinent part of the known egg donation cycle. The third part is that we will, in your journey, will have contracts written. They will be drawn up. It's each party will have their own legal counsel to represent their wants and their needs. And the reason behind this is, so, it's like you can talk till you're blue in the face with your wants or desires for future communication, but really having it clearly written out and stated in a legal manner can help to make sure that everyone is still on the same page. And it gives one last chance, I guess, before things are finalized to ask questions or maybe gain some clarification on how that will look. So contracts, that's typically done in any sort of agency, egg donation process, but it's especially important when we're talking about known egg donation cycles. And then engaged parties. We really, because it is based on that communication, this isn't something where you see a profile and you're off to the races, and then it's like, okay, well, I'll do my thing, you do yours. There will be times where I'll have parents and donors that don't really talk much during the cycle, which is completely okay. So it can be a very emotional process for both parties, so sometimes people want to stay a little bit more internalized during that process. But others, they would love to have that support and have that other party kind of be there for them and talk to them and have that ongoing communication. So again, that's the nice thing, is that since we want these relationships to be organic, both parties can navigate it in the way that feels most natural to them, and that communication can happen before, during, and after, of course, the actual retrieval process. So Compass gets personal. So this is a little bit of my story time. I'll tell you where this came from, and I'll get some water here. It's odd. I do a lot of things through email and such, and so actually talking for this long sometimes can it can be tiring. So anyway, with my own story. So like I mentioned before, I donated 4 out of the 5 cycles I did were in between my pregnancy with my son and with my daughter. And so my son was very little. He was, anywhere like 1 to 2 years old while I was doing those donation cycles. And at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom. My husband was a teacher. I probably don't have to tell anyone this, but teachers don't get paid very much. And so we had to be a little bit creative with our finances. And when I had done my own egg donation cycle, my body did respond really, really well. And I was told that, maybe you should consider egg donation. And I kind of laughed it off at that time. But when we moved to Salt Lake for my husband's career, I started looking into that a little bit more seriously. And so I ended up, filling out my application and moving forward. And it wasn't, even told to me that known donation could be a thing. And that's not, that was normal at that point. It still is with some, clinics. But it was like, no, we do, this is all anonymous. Don't worry about it. If you don't want to be found, you'll never be found. And it kind of left me scratching my head a little bit, because I'm like, well, I wouldn't mind being found. Like I'm doing this to help. I'm not doing this to stay a secret, but okay, if that's the way it goes, and that's the way it goes. So I donated, and I loved my experience with that. It was extremely it was a big, I guess, goal for me to be able to help in some way within the world of third-party reproduction, and help other people that are also going through infertility. And so it was just my way, of giving back. And I, at that time, I think that I had 2 thought processes, or 2 ways of thinking. And one was, how does this benefit me? And the other was, how does this benefit the intended parents? And along that same line, it was, what are my thoughts and feelings? And what are the intended parents' thoughts and feelings? But what I wasn't taking into consideration, or what I didn't realize until more recently when I started doing some soul searching with this, was that the one equation that I was not taking into account were the thoughts and feelings of these future donor conceived children. And then on the same side, my own children that now have these genetic links to people out there that, they may or may not ever get to know. And so I was having a conversation with my son probably about a year ago, and he was asking me about it. And he goes, so you're telling me that I've got genetic siblings? And I'm like, well, he didn't say genetic siblings, but I have brothers and sisters. And I was like, well, yeah, like half genetic siblings that are out there. And he's like, well, where are they? And I'm like, well, I don't know. To be honest, I had a very, very like tiny little snippets of information from the clinic that give me a little bit of an idea as to maybe how many children exist from my donations, but overall I don't have much information at all. So I was like, well, I don't know. And the conversation kept going to where he's like, so you're telling me that I'll never know who my brothers and sisters are. And I was like, well, yeah, in a way. That's the reality of it. They were anonymous donations. It doesn't mean that you won't know or maybe find out in the future, but right now that's how it's looking. And of course his mind went to, what if I go to college and I meet a brother or sister and I never know that they're a brother or sister? I'm like, well, I guess that could happen too. It's like those are all the thoughts that, in his 9, 10-year-old brain were kind of going through his head about it. And it was like in that moment that it really hit me that the decisions that I made to donate, I took into account, again, my thoughts, my feelings, the intended parents' thoughts, feelings, but I never once took a moment to think about, my children and then any children that were born from my donations. And so that it really caused me to, kind of take a step back and be like, whoa, how are we navigating this? And is this the best method in order to be, as thoughtful as possible for these future donor conceived people? So with that, I decided, of course, to launch the known donation, because I do want us to take this into consideration, and I want us to really think about more than just the adults that are involved in the here and now. I want us to think about what the repercussions could be for, the genetic lineage to come further on down the line. So another question that I get a lot, my clinic, they have an in-house program. So why should I go with an agency instead? And that is a fantastic question, because the reality is that an in-house program, typically they're pulling donors that are more local to the clinic. So you are going to be saving costs to go in that direction. You're not going to have the travel costs involved. You're oftentimes, there may not be contractual agreements, so that saves some money on that side, and maybe on the escrow side, because all funds are, being funneled directly through the clinic. So there are cost saving benefits of doing that. And I would never fault someone to go in, that chooses to go in that direction, because I know nothing within this world is cheap, or, you can't really, you can't make it cheap regardless of what direction you go in. But anytime that you can save some money, I don't blame you one bit. But there are some benefits with going with the agency. Well, I feel like there's quite a few, but I'll go over a few of them here. So the first is just a wider net of candidates. So with those in-house programs, of course, it's not going to be very cost effective for them either to be, casting a wide net that would involve travel for these donors. So oftentimes it's, limited to kind of like a smaller geographical range of that pool of donors. With an agency, I'm looking throughout the US. So you may, maybe you live in Washington State and you'd love to have a donor that's a little bit closer to you, because you would like to have actual, like, in-person interaction throughout the years in the future. But you chose a clinic in Southern California because of their, rates of success, or whatever the case may be. So this would allow you to be like, hey, can you find a donor that's a little bit closer to where I'm located? And it just kind of opens up that net, and allows you to not feel like you're pigeonholed into like one geographical area of the country with an in-house program. Um, like I mentioned, we've got contractual agreements. This isn't something to where we're basing it on just the in-house clinic, and it's a lot of times in-house programs. They'll have a contract that they're doing within their program. So like, hey, donor, you need to agree to this. Do you agree to it? Sign off on it. Same thing with the intended parents. They sign off on an internal document, but there's not a document that's done by an outside third party in order to make sure that everything is aligning with the wants, needs, and wishes of the parties. And this is and again, I'll mention that's how I did my donations. I never had legal counsel for my donations, and everything went beautifully for an anonymous journey. But in a known journey, in this situation, you're going to want to have that legally outlined. And so even if an in-house program is like, well, we can find you someone that might be open to known donation, that's great, but you are going to want to find out what their internal processes will look like as far as a written contractual agreement when it comes to that. So with us, it's required. It's not something that you can skip. We do have contracts. Both parties have their own individualized legal counsel to make sure that everything is lined up and ready to go and those expectations are met. You're going to get like-minded candidates. So it's women that are coming to Compass or choose Compass. They oftentimes have Googled, open or known egg donation, or can I get to know the IPs, or whatever the case may be, and it funnels them over to me, and so that is something that they're wanting, and so it's something that from the very get-go of the process, we are screening, knowing that they're going into a known egg donation. So that helps because you know that during their psychological evaluation, it's been brought up. They've talked about the what ifs. They've gone over their reasons for wanting to do it, and so that just makes sure that their visions are aligning before the matching process even starts. And then, of course, it's a priority of ours. The reason why that's a benefit, like I mentioned before, is that a clinic or even another agency that maybe has anonymous and known, they can offer it as an option, but you really don't want it to be an afterthought or well, I guess I would be open to it, or something to where the donor didn't put a whole lot of thought and emphasis on that. With Compass, you know that if you come to us to find your donor, all of those kind of issues or questions have already been ironed out. And so everyone is coming to the table with this as one of their top priorities. And so that just kind of, it helps smooth out the process if this is also one of your top priorities. So we want to make sure that we're creating good, solid matches with this like-mindedness in mind when those matches are occurring. And we want to also make sure that we're continually listening to the voices of donor-conceived people, of even children of donors, like in my situation, so that we can evolve and change processes and methods that are benefiting our future generations, more than just what are my needs and my wants right now. So that's, I guess, if I needed to put it in a nutshell, that would be it. We're listening, we're absorbing, and we're taking that information to create transparency and open communication within donation. If you would like to, feel free to contact me to schedule an IP consultation. I'm more than happy to go a little bit more into depth on your personal situation and how you might want to look into going forward with your own journey. And then I'll also have a few more videos coming up on maybe some of the intricacies of the differences in a known donation journey, as you can start learning a little bit more about egg donation in general. So I thank you for watching this today, and I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy at any time. I'm an email or text away. Thank you.